Before we get into any conversation, literally take a breath in through your nose, let it out. Feel free to make any movements in your chair. You've been sitting down, so stretch a little bit, move a little bit. I do want to start off by, first of all, reintroducing myself. My name is Mila. I'm with the Sierra Club. I'm the Clean Water Advocate. And just really quickly, want to kind of take the temperature of the room. We're just going to popcorn. As you are processing and thinking about the film, and before we invite the panelists up, what's still with you from what you just saw or heard? Feel free to stand up, shout it out. We're all friends here. Deception, thank you. Arrogance, thank you. Power, thank you. Anyone else? Manipulation, thank you. Injustice, thank you. Selfishness, thank you. Resistance, thank you. Love can interrupt trauma. I wrote that down 3 times. Love can interrupt trauma, thank you. Maybe 2 more people. Legacy, thank you. This invisible dome came over us. And that was such a powerful moment, like when they started playing the drums. And even I felt it. I felt protected. And so thank you all for that. I love this film festival because this goes beyond seeing the movies, being entertained by people's stories. This is moving us into a specific direction. The theme for this year's film festival is Power in Unity. And so I'm going to begin to invite my friends up here to join me. And so first we have Tanisha Harris. She's a youth climate and environmental justice activist from South Shore, Chicago, who serves as the Illinois Climate and Energy Program Manager at the Nature Conservancy. She's passionate about equitable and just solutions to climate change and building resilience in communities and nature. And then I'm also welcoming Lindsay Olson. She has an artistic practice that grows out of an intense curiosity about the ways our society is supported by science and technology. She currently serves as the first artist in residence with the Wetlands Initiative. They're also at the back. And serves, I'm sorry, I lost my place. And uses her skills to create innovative textile art to help connect viewers to scientific research and pushes the edge of expression with textile processes. Welcome, ladies. I have 2 microphones. I'm going to sit that there. I'm going to start off with, again, welcoming you all, and want to also acknowledge we currently do not have a Native voice on this panel. We did invite some participants, but unfortunately we were unable to secure them. So we want to acknowledge that. Even though we are a diverse group of women and women of color, we do not speak on behalf of Native peoples, but we do want to carry them in our heart. We have heard their voices, but we do not speak for them. We are inspired by the conversation, and that's kind of what sentiments we will bring with us. Is that fair? So like I asked the audience, like what was still sitting with them? Let's start with that. What's still sitting with you all from the film? I feel like for me, working at the Sierra Club around the state, there's so many different communities that I could put in this film, and it's the same thing of big company, like local jurisdictions and contradictions with agreements. This story plays out around our state and around the country, and for me, realizing that that's another reason why we're here today, like we want to take action, because we also might have some very similar stories, and that's kind of living in me as well. So I want to get into some questions. Tanisha, you are a budding filmmaker yourself, right? I want to start off with, how important is it, in your opinion, to have these types of stories told from the voices of the people that are experiencing them, considering you have your own project? And talk about that a little bit as well.
Narration, and it needs to be told from that community because, and like taking how we talk about the climate movement, there's a lot of exclusion in that movement. My community was excluded, and then hearing about other communities, like you said, you can take so many across Illinois or the Midwest and just plop them in there. And so I'm creating a film called, or documentary series called In My Backyard. It's a play on NIMBY, not in my backyard. And so taking the resilience from the film and putting the power and the focus on the communities that are most impacted by climate change, but bringing joy back to the conversation. I know I said that resilience stay with me, but I love the moments in Bad River where they were having joyous, so they, whether it was really diving into their culture or talking about nature and their what they enjoy to do, like bringing joy back into that, but on in a medium that people can really understand the nuances of what's happening.
Thank you. And speaking of understanding the nuances, right? Just I want everybody to clap who has a humanities degree. Clap if you have a humanities and a few English, right? The reason why I do that is when I was a graduate student at University of Illinois at Chicago, Dr. Rachel Haverlock, who's an English professor, started the UIC Freshwater Lab. She noticed that there were very few opportunities for students in the humanities, art, music, journalism, to get into the conversation of water, and they didn't really understand, right? So the UIC Freshwater Lab made me. So when I saw that you were a part of this panel, Lindsay, I was like, oh, this is the perfect opportunity to show the humanities merging with STEM. So can you talk a little bit about Manufactured River that's showing in the catacombs downstairs, and what brought you to this place of what I call sanitation equity and exploring the interconnection between art and wastewater?
Thank you. Um, I I didn't grow up really liking science or math. Like most artists, I was really avoiding it. And an experience changed something for me. When I was first beginning my career as an artist, I was making idealized portraits of the Chicago area waterways, and I would edit out things like the bridges or parking lots and power wires and things like that. And one day, when my husband and I were canoeing down the Cowsag Channel, we passed something called an aeration station. It's a SEPA station. And it was a lot of engineering, a lot of very expensive engineering in the middle of nowhere. And I wondered why it was there, who built it, and what was going on with that. And so that led me to go to the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Chicago. They built the waterfall to aerate the sluggish canal. It's the very, very end of the wastewater treatment process. And the more I learned about the wastewater treatment process, the more I realized that that was a really neglected area of freshwater, and that scientists and engineers have done their jobs so well that we don't even remember a time when, in the mid 19th century, a third of urban populations died every year from cholera and other waterborne diseases. So that was a really powerful epiphany for me, that I could use my training as an artist to learn about science, and then to use my art to advocate for paying attention to what scientists do for us in creating these technologies that are required for healthy living.
So, as a scientist, I appreciate you because people still they're like, "What do you do?" And I try and explain it. It's like over their head. One, this was in a relationship with Stickney, right? Stickney Water Treatment Facility plant, well, water reclamation is one of the largest wastewater reclamation facilities in the world. Um, I think of all of the seven, we process like 450 billion gallons of waste a year, 700 million gallons of waste a day. It is a huge benefit to have that technology. But when I think about the film and this tension between one, procuring energy, two, having permits that give people the right to be on certain lands or permits to pollute, that not everybody shares the same narrative. So if we were in St. Louis, we would probably be having a different conversation about wastewater because of Chicago's reversal of the river. As you think about the film and the tensions between poverty, right, and energy being present and providing jobs versus the risks associated with Line 5 probably failing in the future. How do you all think about that tension and how we talk about opportunities for solutions and action, knowing that we got to keep people employed and we also want to protect our environment?
So I did work on the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, which was passed in 2021, and it helps Illinois have a just and equitable transition to clean, renewable energy. And the reason I say just and equitable is because whether it's whatever your energy source, however it's procured, there is a lot of injustice to the community that is impacted by it. And it can happen to anyone, but especially in the most vulnerable populations like BIPOC, like low income communities. And so that tension of like, we still have to keep people employed is like, I think about how Siege of that bill was like, yes, we need to develop a new workforce, but in green jobs, jobs that keep people employed, keeping thriving, but they do not do additional harm to the community or the surrounding environment.
Thank you. Lindsay, I have a follow-up question just about how your learning curve went, right? I work a lot with wastewater treatment facilities. They do not do a good job of speaking to the public, right? Anytime MWRD is reaching out to you, something's wrong, right? Like it's when you say like, it's back of house, if they did their job well, it's almost seamless, right? Which is why we still have that confusion between who does drinking water and who does wastewater. In your opinion, as you learned about the treatment process, was it challenging to understand for you to then translate it into art? And what advice would you give a regular person, right, who probably should know how our water is treated? What can they expect? How long did it take you to learn? And was it challenging for you?
Well, that's a big question. um, I think part of the problem that I had with growing up and trying to learn math and science in our educational system was that I could not learn science and math in a 45-minute chunk. I am the kind of person that needs a full immersion experience, which is granted not what everybody would like to do. Um, but it is possible just by asking a few questions with water professionals and listening carefully and understanding that even though you may hear engineers speak about what they do, you probably won't understand 100% of what they're talking about. You maybe, I could understand like 10% of what they were talking about, but you can do an awful lot with 10%. And one of the things I just want to mention as a follow up to the discussion about environmental justice is that you cannot talk about the MWRD without discussing the fact that they reversed the flow of the Chicago River. And it was done in order to protect the drinking water source in Lake Michigan, but it created huge downstream problems for other communities that were never even asked if this could be done. They just did it.
Yeah, which is why I said if we were in St. Louis, this would be a very different panel,
Exactly.
right? And it depends like who's telling the story. Definite benefit for the city. Check, check. Benefit for the city of Chicago, right? Our Department of Water sells water to like 130 different cities from Lake Michigan, right? The transport and the cleaning of it. And so it's a benefit, but downstream, not so much. And the reason why I asked you that question is there was a part in the film where the narrator was saying that they can't respond to Enbridge's request immediately because they were fighting a mine, right? And so there are so many fires to put out when you are a frontline community or you are in an environmental justice area that one, you always have to stay on top of the science. Always. You have to understand how the laws are changing and who's lobbying for what. And then you have to prepare people to be in multiple places at the same time. Tanisha, considering your role, how is it that you kind of operate in, at the community level, preparing people for the myriad of environmental stressors that they have to address in their communities?
Well, one of the things that I love to tap into is that these communities are already resilient without my presence or another presence. Like they are continuing to do the work and take up the mantle with or without support. It makes me think about when the COVID-19 pandemic hit and I was working with a coalition of groups across Illinois. We had an environmental justice committee that was just extremely tapped out. Like we're talking policy directors delivering water and translating COVID-19 materials because at the end of the day, those environmental justice organizations or advocates have a responsibility to their community, and you do have to put out all these little fires. And so I think while we're thinking about Bad River and like maybe what was happening with COVID-19, it's and even myself as an activist, it's really like leaning into community. And that's where I find a lot of my strength and resiliency. And also I find comfort and solace that the community is resilient, and whether I'm the one doing it or someone else is doing it, or I'm training another young person to figure out how to become an advocate, that work will continue on, and there is always someone to help and support it, and it's found within the community itself.
Thank you. Lindsay, I do want to ask you, how'd you merge textiles into this manufactured river project? Did you go back and forth with different modalities of how it is that you wanted to kind of take your experience, or was it always textiles and the water came in after?
Uh, the experience of being a science artist is a little bit mysterious to even me, and I'm doing it. But part of the process involves this ability to shift my focus between learning the science, and then I learn to a point where I get stuck. If I'm stuck on the science, I shift over to the art side and I figure out how to work with what I've got under my belt already. So, this constant shifting back and forth between science and art was really helpful. Um, I wanted to use textiles for this project for a couple of reasons. One of them was that it all of us deal with textiles every day in our life, and I wanted a way to shrink the distance between the art and the message about science. And that seems to be a way to shrink that distance. It isn't something abstract or far away. We all use textiles in our daily lives. And then the other thing I wanted to communicate through the use of the textiles was that the MWRD, more than any other lab or organization I have ever worked in, was the most diverse workplace I have ever seen. So the materials that I used for the artwork include high-end things like silk and very fine linen, but I also used denim, recycled work shirts, deconstructed used textiles, that sort of thing, to kind of communicate the democracy of all these different people working together to create a clean water.
And when immediately I thought about the flood mitigation projects that are happening around Cook County that MWRD is spearheading, right? Especially considering, if you did not know, a little background on Illinois, what we have 102 counties, right? 47% of the state's population lives in one, and that's Cook County, right? We also have the largest population of African Americans in a single county in the nation. We are also the second largest county behind Los Angeles County. So in terms of like size and geography and diversity, we're still highly segregated, but I think understanding form and function, where people are located across Cook County, who is at risk for what sort of environmental catastrophes is extremely important just for us to know. And as I think about Enbridge going through Bad Rivers Reservation, it brought to mind what's happening in Harvey, Illinois. So there's an area that is supposed to be used for a water retention. However, it's requiring people to be removed from their residential properties, right? So now we're in this position of environmental solutions right, for an environmental justice community, and not everybody being on the same page with the interventions that would protect the whole as it compromises me as an individual. And we're seeing these solutions being brought forth, and yet people not understanding the science, or I understand the science, but I just don't want to leave my home. It seems as though we as a society will be put into these positions constantly of making decisions of relocating, making decisions of who we allow to pollute in these, these projects. Do either of you have any insight on how do we as people kind of process? We may have to make decisions that, uproot us from our homes in order to be kind of in lockstep with the environment.
That's a big question. um, I would say that's really difficult because people have or most people have a lot of pride in where they grew up. Like, I'm from South Shore, it's low income. I dealt with a plethora of hardships, and I still love it. And I love it because it nurtured my relationship to nature and my surrounding environment just from a tree in my yard. And so I can really empathize with a community being told, like, to improve this you have to leave. That's a really hard pill to swallow, and a very difficult decision to possibly make, which is why I'm a big proponent of making solutions with communities and for communities. And I'm wondering, before you even get to that difficult decision, was that community invited to conversations? Was that community engaged in a meaningful way, in a way that they could authentically show up consistently, without it being a burden or another thing to do? And so, and then how do you tell those stories? So, if you are the person who is like, I have to go into this community and tell them, well, we have to do this to save this, how do you navigate that as the person delivering the news? And do you understand the other processes or other steps and pathways to work with the community member? And so, when I'm thinking about the documentary series I'm making, it's for communities and by communities. And the reason that the solutions, which are from BIPOC frontline communities, are being selected are because those communities it's driven by that community. And when they come to the table, they have said, we understand what is happening. We understand some difficult decisions have to be made, but we have solutions that work with this community, and we're ready to see them to fruition.
And they're ready to make those solutions. Like, they are trained. So in the Bad River film, you see they're going to be lawyers and coming back to the reservation. They're going to be scientists and coming back to the reservation. So that intelligence on the STEM side is there, just like the cultural ancestral intelligence as well.
I also noticed in the credits, some of the animators were from the Bad River tribe, and so I want to say I love your work. I saw it in the catacombs. I'm also, I thought I was going to be a scientist, and now I'm making a film, and I'm like, I love pairing science and art together. So thank you.
Glad to hear it. One of the things that disturbed me about this film was just how much money is involved, and how just going through the judicial system is going to bankrupt the tribe, because the Enbridge can go on for decades with this. They have billions of dollars. But that if we need to find a really good solution for everyone, we have to stop thinking that there is only one way to do it, and that's the loudest, richest voice in the room, or the most privileged voice in the room. That there are so many solutions to any problem that there has to be room for people saying, no, why don't we try it this way? Can we talk about this? Can we see how we can solve a problem without destroying land and people's culture?
And most of this also is relationships, So I started at Sierra Club in 2020, 2 years after Illinois Sierra Club and Friends of the Chicago River filed a lawsuit against the Trump Towers. Did you all see that they were found liable for violating the Clean Water Act? Anybody saw that? Yeah, well, we can clap for that. Yes, clap it up. um, that was a really long lawsuit, right? And I always laugh, like, people don't like to talk to Sierra Club because we sue you. Like, we are C4, we do lobby, and I think that is a powerful kind of place within the conservation movement when we work collaboratively to hold someone accountable for violating Clean Air Acts and Clean Water Acts where we're needed. But not a lot of people are in that position to hold entities accountable. And so here I am, super charged up. We're like, yeah, this was a win. And people were kind of unimpressed. I'm like, do you know what we just did? But also, it was for the Chicago River. So people also have this negative perception of our freshwater system because they are undereducated. Again, there is no natural history taught in Illinois to kind of build appreciation and an ethic for us being really inland coastal, right? We have communities named after water, Blue Island, right? But water is not a part of our ethic. It almost feels like we have so much of it, we can ignore it, until the summertime comes and we're, glad that all the tourists, are here. But our livelihood as a city and as a county is because we have all of this fresh water. And even though Lake Superior is far away from us, we do care about the health of the entire Great Lakes systems. So I want to pause here and also say that we are welcoming brief questions from the audience, and we do have a microphone out in the audience. If there's anyone that would like to stand up, I can come over your way. I can't see much though. Do we have anyone have a question before we continue? No? Okay. When I think about people, oh, we have one? Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Love the film, love the panel. I guess question the top of my mind is about messaging. This film resonated with me and to skew left on a lot of stuff. But what about our brothers and sisters on the right side of things? Because this preaches to the choir. I think a lot of people are like, oh, I understand what this message is. I want to help. But there might be some folks on the right side of the spectrum who aren't getting the message. So how can we use a vocabulary or align ourselves where they hear the message? Because it's a universal one. It's protecting what's important to you and your family. And yeah, so if you were to talk to someone who maybe you wouldn't normally talk to, or who maybe doesn't share your values, as a lot of people in the room do, what would you say?
One of the things I learned early in my activist journey when I was 13 years old is that the most powerful tool in my toolkit was storytelling, which I think really illuminated by Bad River and this film festival. And that's something I teach the young people I work with is like communications and messaging is crucial, not just to get your point across or to pass a bill or hold someone accountable, but it's how you really stoke the empathy in other people because your story is your lived experience and someone may not be able to directly relate to your lived experience, but the emotion and the impact is something that really helps bridge the gap between whomever you're talking to. And it's also why I decided to make a documentary series because, much like we're all here for this film screening, it's bringing in a large crowd. People are here to learn and understand like what is happening in other places. But it's also an opportunity to give those communities a larger platform to use their voice. And so when I started at 13, it was just like, I'm talking to my family, I'm talking to my peers. And over my 14 years since then, I'm now talking to people on all over the globe, honestly. And I realized that my story is like breaking down barriers, whether we share the same morals or values or not, or whether we have the same lived experience. And so the power of storytelling and a very compelling narrative like Bad River or the other films you may go to is how you reach out and work with other people to eventually come to common ground and understanding and mutuality.
I love the way you put that. It's really beautiful. And I would just add also that the LGBTQ community has given us a path forward. And I think one of their strategies was to meet people one on one with family members who happen to be in that spectrum and that part of the culture and find connections that way. And it's one on one storytelling. where are the common points beyond politics? We all have these trigger words, and these trigger words tend to make us want to just snap. If we can avoid that kind of black and white thinking and find common ground, just as you were saying, I think that's an important thing to keep in mind.
I so appreciate that question because it reminds me of my very first year at Sierra Club. Born and raised in Chicago, now I have a job across the entire state. Much area and acres that are unfamiliar to me because I grew up in a city, and I realized my superpower was actively listening for the harm that they were experiencing. Right, like I have to receive their tension. I have to allow them to communicate with me how they perceive this solution as harm. I have to receive it. Now, I also have to be discerning because as I'm listening, I'm acknowledging where are they getting their information from? Because there is science, right, in papers and in journals that are saying the absolute opposite of the science and the papers and the journals that I use and that I am published in. That was a little flex, right? A little flex, right? Right, yeah. But there's so much information that anybody can kind of buttress their argument with data and facts, right? Sitting there listening, one, they feel respected because especially in this state where it's rural versus urban, I can see how people in central Illinois can feel like Cook County sucks the air out of the room. I've seen it happen. I purposely move so that people from central Illinois and southern Illinois don't feel like that. So if I do that, then I know it's real. I've also had to stop comparing between myself and my experience and someone else's experience, like truly listening. And in that moment, someone's not fighting for you to believe them that in my head, this is going to cause my business harm. I got 2 kids in college, an aging parent. I'm in I'm still paying off student loans. I could possibly go bankrupt. I'm receiving that. I'm a businesswoman. I know how it is that I need to communicate with you because some of my solutions could actually put you out of business. So I need to figure out a way. Let me receive your potential solutions. How do we come in the middle? How do I negotiate? How are we open to negotiation? Because at the end of the day, all of this land, we have to co-steward, right? And if someone feels as though they're not listened to, they're not open to negotiation. They're definitely not open to the solutions from the conservation space. So that's kind of what I practice. And it helps build alliances. People will help you pass a bill. They're not helping Sierra. They're like, you know what? Because it's you, because I know you, I trust you. Relationships are so important. And that is why we have to know each other. I love that we're here, but there are 2 other film screenings happening this evening, same films, Dominican University and also at Waukegan. So while we're not in the same place, totally different viewer demographics, we are sharing and receiving the same story, but through different lenses. So I did want to lift that up. Any other questions from the audience? Okay. We want to turn our attention to action, right? Because again, thinking about that hashtag power in unity. Lindsay, I'll start with you. In your opinion, what are some actions that people can take to be a part of this solutions-oriented lifestyle that we're trying to move forward with?
To make things easier on your wastewater professionals, do not use your toilet as a trash can. There are only 3 things that should get flushed, and everything else gets stuck in the screens and is a huge headache to clear. So that's number 1. Number 2 is that on a water action day, which is a day when there's a very heavy rainfall, if all of us in Cook County could just remember, hold off doing the dishes, taking a really super long shower, washing your laundry, it would be such a big difference. We would make a huge difference collectively.
And to follow up on that, why is that true? Our pipes that are underneath the ground can only accommodate about 2.5 inches of rain per hour before we start to back up and flood, right? So our combined sewage systems, I mean, a marvel of engineering 100 years ago, really not made for 2.7 million people, 6 million people to use at the same time. And so our engineering, while it was great 100 years ago, not so good when everybody's flushing the toilet while it's raining, and people do not understand, where does that raw sewage go, Tanisha?
Lake.
Right. It gets released into our lake and into our rivers, which is really kind of unfortunate. And you can monitor those CSO events if you're a science lover like me. You can actually download an alert system on your phone. So every time that there is an overflow, it will alert your phone and you will get a little ping for where it was discharged. So, yeah.
Just as a humorous aside, I would also like to say that there are several people at the plant that told me that whenever there's a football game and there's halftime, they're the first ones to know.
Oh, hilarious.
Everybody gets up and flushes at the same time.
Funny story, our first field trip in grad school was to Stickney, and we were at the first phase of separation. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't pick that field trip. Tony, any actions from you?
Well, one, I didn't know you had field trips in grad school. That's fun. So actually, okay. So there is a climate action lobby day coming up on May 21st. It's led by the Illinois Environmental Council and the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition, where you can hop on a bus or the Amtrak or drive and meet with your elected officials and talk to them about issues that are most present and prevalent in your community and solutions you would like to see passed. And so, again, through that thing of storytelling and the fact that sometimes the best messenger is someone from that community or someone that understands and resonates with that community, I really encourage you all to consider going to that Climate Action Lobby Day and seeing what difference you can make with hundreds of other people across Illinois.
And so from me, all things water. One, boating season is coming up, so be mindful of your trash, on your boats and while you are at our launch sites. Do check for fish consumption advisories, and so every year there are certain species that you should avoid consuming, as well as certain sizes. So do be mindful as fishing season picks up and boating season, following the health of the water to keep yourself healthy, your children, even your pets. And also, you can go ahead and take your phone and scan the QR code, visit the link for any list of actions, and then also let us know, as you take the survey, if you have any events or activities coming up that people can act on. We would love to know that as well. And so, Lindsay, how can people continue to support your work, and how long will you be showing in the catacombs?
I have an exhibition coming up at the Peggy Notebart Museum with 4 separate projects related to fresh water, so you can come to that. I also wearing 2 hats tonight. I'm the first artist in residence for the Wetlands Initiative. We have a table in the back. You can sign up for plant plugs and other volunteer activities to help wetlands. Wetlands are a fabulous way to clean water. It's just amazing.
Thank you. Tony, how can people support your work at the Nature Conservancy, and is anything coming up that people should know about?
Yeah, so in my backyard is starting pre-production. So if you want to come to me afterwards and talk about it, I'm more than happy to do so. We're hoping to start all screenings in April next year. So wish me luck on that. But also the Nature Conservancy in Illinois has a robust volunteer stewardship program. So whether you're going out onto one of our preserves or doing some work right here in Chicago, I highly recommend signing up and volunteering.
Thank you. And from the Sierra Club, we have 14 different groups around the state. We are always looking for new members, supporters, and volunteers. Chicago Water Week is coming up, so please follow current on all things water related. There are some really great activities, events, talks just for the entire week. I think that's starting in, May? You have to Google it because I can't remember. Also, if you are interested in workshops on harmful algal blooms, PFAS, please do look me up on LinkedIn or find me on the Sierra Club website. Would love to continue amplifying clean water for all. We have a diverse portfolio of water priorities, including the clean water issues within Illinois prisons, lead contamination within Illinois prisons, Cahokia Heights, which is in southern Illinois, that has been flooding with raw sewage for 40 years, so we're working with them. There is the Muhammad Aquifer issue. There is, combined sewage overflow issues. There's the data center, that's a quantum facility. So there's not a shortage of work. We do need your support. We need your talent, your understanding, because these issues can be high level. We don't want to just drop you in there and it feels like you're, underwater, for lack of a better word. And we want to help you learn how to advocate for your water, learn the various laws so that your homes, your livelihoods, as well as just your families can be protected. And with that, I thank you all. Let's give our panelists a round of applause, please.